Hello and welcome to the Big Yearning podcast. We are two life coaches who really enjoy meaningful discussions about big questions. Our work and our lives have been very much shaped by these questions, and they've taken us to some amazing places in our lives and within ourselves. We all long for things. We all carry big yearnings in our hearts. And over the next hour or so, we hope to touch on some of these yearnings and perhaps give you some ideas or insights to help you be clearer about what you long for and how to get it. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 17 of the Big Yearning podcast. My name is Neil.
And my name's Alexander.
And yes, a very, very warm welcome. Welcome to listeners who have tuned in before, who will know a little bit of what to expect in terms of the format and who me and Alexander are. But also welcome to anybody who is tuning in for the very first time. From old and new listeners alike, we really, really appreciate your feedback and suggestions for topics. The podcast really thrives on input from listeners to keep it dynamic and lively and zestful. And on that topic, we have had a request for a specific topic, which we will be doing. We won't be doing in the next episode. We will be doing very shortly. So thank you to that person who's made that request. Now, regular listeners will know that myself and Alexander always have a check-in before we start off. And we were talking about this recently, just kind of being really clear about why we do this. And we thought that we'd like to just explain to the listeners about why we do the check-in. New listeners or any listeners may tune in and expect to be hearing a certain topic, and then they suddenly find us talking about ourselves. And so, why do we do that? Okay, so here's why we do that. We offer a brief check-in because we believe it's really important that you get a sense of us as real people who grapple with the topics that we talk about. There will be times when Alexander and I struggle with those, and there are times when we feel like we succeed with those. So it's really about kind of keeping it real, and I think not putting ourselves on a pedestal above listeners. Yeah, so that's my piece on that. Alexander, is there anything you would like to add to that?
Yeah, I think that there's a huge amount of value to this idea of just keeping things real and being as real and as vulnerable as we can. That's something that Neil and I are really just trying to model through this podcast. It's one of the things that I think it's often one of the surprising things that people find through the kind of deep coaching work that we do. They come to us, whoever the client is, they've come along and they've said, I've got this real challenge. I'm not doing very well with this aspect of my life. I'd like more of this. I'd like to feel happier about things. And one of the absolutely integral parts of that work is coming back to the truth of who you are. And the truth is always beautiful. The truth is always inspiring. And the truth is always, it's just very deep and wholesome. And there's always an aspect of mystery to it. There is something about each individual coming home to themselves in a very full way, which is remarkable, especially at this time in our history, in this culture. It's a very brave thing to leave behind all of your protections and your masks and the things that you put up between you and the world to make sure that you're going to be okay, and just to say, this is who I am. This is the real person that I am. So what Neil and I try to do through these podcasts is stir up thoughts and feelings for you, and we try and offer you ideas and insights, but we're also really trying to model something in the relationship between us and in just the way that we speak and the way that we're accountable through it. So we do these check-ins at the beginning of the episode in the same way that we do check-ins between ourselves. We both thoroughly believe in the concept of a check-in, and it's about being seen, dropping pretense, dropping masks, and just declaring to the world, this is who I am in all of my strength and my confidence, but also in my vulnerability, in my weakness, in my confusions, in my doubts. This is who I am. It's only in that place, that level of vulnerability, that we can form kind of connections that we want, that we can find the kind of belonging that we want. There's all sorts of things that we only find when we have the courage to do that declaration. So that's a big part, I think, of why we do this check-in stuff. All right, on that note, Neil, would you like to check in?
Yes, thank you, Alexander. Yeah, generally I'm feeling pretty good. It's interesting because we are recording this podcast episode of an evening. Normally, you do it in the morning, so that I usually look out onto my resplendent tree out of a bedroom window, but now I'm just looking out into pitch black. So there's something for me here and now of an atmosphere of hunkered downness, of winter evening in the UK, sort of warm, snuggly armchair feeling. So that's a different set of circumstances from how we usually do the podcast. I'm feeling a lot of gratitude. I'm feeling a lot of gratitude at the moment, and it's we're going to be talking about gratitude. And I didn't try and kind of get myself into a place of feeling gratitude just to line myself up for the podcast episode. But I've been feeling, very grateful and fortunate for a lot of the things in my life, really. And I've been allowing that to simply to be there and not sort of knock it down or knock it on the head. I'm very appreciative around certain developments in my coaching business. Last week, I found out that I was due to start a narrative coaching course last week, and it was cancelled. But the organisation who are running it offered me a different and better course, a certificated course, at a discounted rate, which was great. So I'm really looking forward to starting that next week. And I've got a couple of new clients who started recently, which is really nice. New clients always keep me fresh and alert. I'm always delighted to see Alexander when we do these podcasts. Always look forward to our discussions, and listeners may know who've tuned in before will know that last podcast we tried a slightly different format, which is a little bit more discussion based. So we would to and fro a little bit more than what we have in the past. And when we came off of the podcast a couple of weeks ago, we both felt that was, I think, a kind of seismic shift in terms of how it felt in terms of doing it. So I'm very much looking forward to that kind of newer way of doing things, while at the same time appreciating that it means it's a little bit less scripted. So we have to make sure that we kind of stay sort of on line with it, really on target with it. But so that's a kind of risk, but the kind of benefit, the goal, if you like, the gold rather, is something which is I think more flowing, more interesting to listen to, hopefully, more ping-pongy, more dynamic. So I'm looking forward to today. Yeah, that's me, Alexander. Over to you.
Thank you, Neil. Okay, my check-in. I have been going through a really, really hard time. This third lockdown feels like just another step up in terms of difficulty. My sleep has been really disrupted. My sleep is the first thing to go when I'm upset or stressed. My sleep really goes out the window. I really appreciate everyone who's been contacting me to offer advice about sleeping techniques and apps and supplements and things. I have spent most of my life collecting this information, but I still really appreciate everyone who wants to help. So thank you for that. Once I haven't slept for a while, my mental health is not always the best. And in a certain sense, it's been a reminder. I remember doing years and years of training in coaching. My training was very hands-on. I didn't do a lot of very little sort of classroom-based or academic training in coaching. Mine was really, hit the ground running and here are some clients and then get some real-time kind of tutoring around it. And I remember spending a long time developing the skills and the confidence to ask the questions at the right time and drawing on my previous philosophical and theological and all sorts of other training in order to make sure that there was some depth to what I was offering. But at the heart of it, really one of the things that makes me a great coach is my sensitivity. And I had a good friend who was visiting me in between lockdowns, and he was bemoaning the fact that he was really sensitive. He was saying that he gets really upset really easily. and he just feels things very strongly and how annoying it is. And I asked him to also think about the gifts that come with it, the things that he would notice that other people wouldn't, the things that he will pick up on that other people might miss, and the ways that he can support people or give feedback or be more attentive because of that sensitivity. And that's the skill that I really rely on when I'm sitting with a client and they're saying something to me and I feel something or I pick up on a bit of body language. It's that heightened sensitivity that allows me to do my job so well. And it's that heightened sensitivity that's been so hard lately. I feel things very keenly. I'm very aware of things. I'm very aspirational. I've got a lot of projects on the go, a lot of things that I'm juggling. And when I haven't slept and my mental health isn't fantastic, then I have to drop things, and things just do drop, and I'm exhausted and I can't think clearly. And it's so frustrating, and I've been so angry the last couple of weeks about all the things I haven't been able to do, even though this feels like an ideal time to do them. So I'm really grateful to the people who have been supportive through that. I've been doing calls with friends. I've been doing video games with friends. And I've really just been trying to put things in place which are nourishing, that are within my capacity. So beginning into cooking a little bit more. I have been eating pretty badly for lockdowns 1 and 2. It was just felt like get fuel into the body. And I'm now trying to go back to first principles a little bit more. I've resurrected baking bread, and I'm making food from scratch a bit more. I have been collecting the stuff to start making mead. I've never done any brewing in my life. I'm thinking of making some mead. And getting back into lifting weights at home, that's actually been pretty good. On the days I have energy, I've now got some pretty good routines together. That feels good. I'm really pushing myself. That I finished that feeling strong, and that's good for me. Coaching has been amazing through this. As I come on the calls, because they're all calls at the moment, with my clients, and I think almost all of them have sort of said, well, I haven't done much of the homework because I'm really struggling with the lockdown, and that's okay. We get back to what's real. As I was saying earlier, the really amazing stuff happens when we're real with each other. Coaching calls me to be my best self, my highest self, and it kind of kicks my brain into a higher gear. I can kind of almost hear some fans scaling up in my brain as I'm using more of my processing power, and I'm just noticing more, and I'm able to say more useful things. And I end the session knowing I've really helped somebody. That has been a real source of nourishment. I'm very grateful to my clients. I think that the Biden inauguration felt like a really big thing for me. I really am interested and invested in America and its ongoing experiment with democracy. Biden being inaugurated felt like a clean slate. It felt to me like a ray of hope. It's not my country, but it's significant and it felt important to me. I'm also really grateful for all the Bernie Sanders memes that have sprung up in the last few days. Bernie Sanders, of course, grumpily sitting in his Vermont gloves in the cold. And that, if you just do a little bit of searching for Bernie Sanders memes, he is now everywhere. They are putting that picture of him looking grumpy in a chair on every possible setting. And it's amazing. And I'm loving it. I'm really here for it. That's been great. And gratitude has just been seeping more and more into my mind lately. Sometimes I'm so frustrated and so I'm struggling so much with the challenges of this lockdown that gratitude has been really hard for me to access. But as I've focused on it and I've tried to soften and I've tried to welcome that in, it has been really good for me. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation today. And I think that'll do for my check-in. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you very much, Alexander. There's one little thing I just wanted to add, if it's okay, or just chip in with. When you talked about being highly sensitive, you may be aware of this book, and listeners may be aware of this book. There's a book by a woman called Elaine Aron, The Highly Sensitive Person. So this whole notion of being highly sensitive, feeling feelings very strongly, experiencing things very strongly, is certainly within recent times, a recognized phenomenon. And I kind of put myself in that bracket, really. I've read that book. And so if anything that Alexander said when he checked in there about sensitivity kind of chimes with you, I really recommend checking out this book. It's called The Highly Sensitive Person by Elaine Aron.
Great, thanks, Neil.
Okay, so on to today's discussion topic, which is gratitude and appreciation. And the way that we're going to do this is first start to talk about, okay, gratitude, what is it and why is it important? And I think in the last episode, you named me as the definition guru, didn't you?
Yep, I've got a note here saying, Neil, definition guru.
Definition guru. So here we go, the definition for gratitude. So gratitude is the expression of appreciation for what one has. Okay, it's very, very simple. It's an affirmation of goodness and warmth that is spontaneously generated from within. So it's something that kind of comes up spontaneously. It's both a feeling and a practice. So we're going to sort of cover both of those aspects of it today in our discussion. And we can also see it as a very social emotion in that it strengthens relationships. And that speaks to a large part of its importance and its relevance, I think. And some people argue that the roots of gratitude as a human experience, as a human emotion, run very deep in our evolutionary history, emanating from the survival value of helping others and being helped in return. So very, very kind of simple, straightforward, clean and clear mutuality, mutual helping. So, I mean, you could argue that it has survival value and that it's hardwired within us. Okay. So like I said, we'll be looking at gratitude both as a spontaneous feeling, something that arises almost magically, that kind of flows out of us if we can manage not to kind of push it down and we give it space. But we're also going to be talking about it as a practice, something that you actively do, something that you actively engage in. Now, this is quite a common idea within personal development and self-development circles and communities, this notion of consciously developing gratitude and developing that muscle of gratitude. Can't remember the woman's name, but the woman who wrote that book, The Secret, she's produced literature on gratitude and little booklets that you can get and everything. So it is an idea which does have currency. It certainly is very well known within personal development circles. One of the things I wanted to say before we really launch into this is there may be many people sat listening to this who are in very difficult circumstances, in lockdown, very socially isolated, really struggling with aspects of their own emotional and psychological well-being. And I really want to put it out there really strongly that, this isn't what we're going to be talking about today. It's not kind of instructional. It's not kind of saying you must do this. We're not even saying that it's necessarily an easy thing to do, because I think with all the topics that we talk about on this podcast, they're challenges. They require something to be nurtured and developed, and that takes a certain amount of will, conscious effort. So I certainly don't want to be sat here talking and thinking it's going to be an easy thing necessarily for people to do during this time. And at the same time, the flip side of that is that my belief, and Alexander's belief, I believe, is that it is a really, really, it's such a useful thing to be able to develop if you can. So for me, as with all the podcasts, I think this is an offering. So listener, take this as an offering. There might be bits that you choose to run with and be interested in and think, oh yeah, great, there's something in that for me. There may be other bits which you feel don't speak to you as loudly, and that's fine. You can let them go. So it's an offering for you to kind of see what really settles within you in terms of this topic of gratitude. Before I carry on, Alexander, is there anything you would like to say just on that bit about, doing a piece on gratitude and appreciation at this time?
I think that gratitude is an amazing resource, an amazing practice. I think that it can generate a lot of good feelings for us, a lot of energy. I think that it can be a great combat against fatigue and alienation. I think that it can be very heartwarming and connect us very strongly with the present moment. I think presencing is something we'll be talking about quite a lot in this episode. So I do think that it's a good resource for this time. But I also, as I said in my check-in, I have found that there have been times during this difficult episode, and my heart really goes out to anybody who's either very isolated or has the opposite problem. I know a lot of people, they're at home, they're parenting while doing their jobs, while trying to keep the home running. There is no respite. So yeah, I mean, use these resources as you can, as makes sense for you. If you can manage to access this stuff, it could be a way to free up some energy for you, to get some respite, to get some good feelings during your day. But as Neil said, take from this what you're capable of right now. If we weren't in the middle of a lockdown and a pandemic, then I'd probably be a bit more pushy about this. I'm certainly very encouraging of people to connect with gratitude for a whole range of reasons, which we'll cover today. But these are COVID times, and we just have to make the use of the resources we have.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thanks, Alexander. There's something for me about gratitude. One of the things about it is that it's kind of contagious. And if you bring it into an interaction or a relationship, you'll often find it becomes more mutual. So not only do you yourself experience a sense of appreciation or goodness and warmth, but so does the other person as well. And in a way, that makes it more likely that some of your needs and desires and wants and big yearnings even can be met, because you're in a kind of mutually kind of appreciative relationship where you respect the other person, you're listening to them, and the same is happening back for you in return. So when we think about the title of this podcast, the Big Yearning Podcast, where does gratitude fit in? Okay, so for me, gratitude fits in that it can be one of the kind of core building blocks from which we create relationships from the way that we are in the world, that actually makes our wants and desires and wishes and aspirations become more likely. Because what we're doing, and we'll talk about this more later, I'm sure, we're kind of orientating our being in a certain direction away from another direction. And I don't want to go into this in huge academic detail, but there is quite a bit of evidence that shows that if you do work with gratitude as a conscious practice, there is a positive impact on mental health. There is a positive impact on physical health. Some studies, for example, show that if you have an active practice of gratitude, then what happens is a decrease in words that you use that express kind of negative states of heart and mind, like resentment and envy. These things can subside.
I'm remembering as you're talking, there's been a number of times in my life when I've been around laughter workshops, when I've been running festivals or holding other events. Sometimes we'd get people in and they want to run a laughter thing, and I never really got it in the initial, because I'm like, what's that going to involve? I mean, okay, all right, we'll get a whole bunch of people together in a tent and then we're going to laugh together. So the person stands up at the front and they go, right, we're all going to laugh now. And everyone looks very nervous and sheepish and British, and they look at their feet and they feel awkward and uncomfortable. And then the person sort of says, okay, so begin by just going, ha, ha, just making this ha noise. And so everyone in the tent sort of looks at each other and goes, ha. But no, come on. Let's really get some energy going here. Ha! Ha! And everyone just starts going, ha! And it's from the outside, it sounds like the pack of dogs in this tent. And and then everyone starts finding it hilarious that they're making these stupid noises. And then they start laughing. And then everyone's feeding off each other's laughter. And within pretty short amount of time, less than 5 minutes, the noise coming from this tent is just delightful. Like, it's just this wave of joy. Because everyone is just rolling around laughing, and they got tears streaming down their face, and they're just incredibly happy. And I was thinking of that because there's two things here. There's one which is understanding gratitude, understanding its purpose and its practice and its mechanics and how you begin to access it. And then there's the benefits of it, the effects of it in your life. So you may at some times need to be going, ha! in order to access some kind of sense of gratitude. It may start off like a motor that won't start. And then it starts humming, and then it's all the effects that comes out of it. All these people who were just utterly overcome with happiness in this tent had 5 minutes before just been going ha at each other. So I think those are the two things that certainly I would like to kind of cover today: is the practice, but then the echoes, the effects that it has, the kind of reverberations that it has in ourselves and in our relationships. Little anecdote, I just had to throw it out there.
I think that's lovely. I think there's a lot in that for me. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I hear you saying is that you kind of overcame a degree of sort of skepticism about this sort of laughter workshop stuff.
Yeah, I guess I'm very British. I mean, I'm not going to laugh. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. And then the last bit you say, Alexander, is about you use the analogy of getting an engine going. You have to kind of inject some energy. You may have to inject some kind of conscious sort of push, some oomph to kind of get it going. Yeah. Okay. Great. No, lovely. I think that's a little anecdote on a side, but perfectly relevant. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to start talking more now about kind of how you do it and things to look out for. So we're looking here, I think, more so at gratitude as a practice, having described what it is as a feeling and emotion. One of the things that I've found really useful is gratitude comes in for me very much as a bulwark against taking things for granted, against being complacent about things. There's an awful lot in my life. Sometimes I think I can be very, take for granted, or that's just how it is. But when I kind of really, and with that feeling, there's a kind of greyness, there's a kind of neuteredness about that kind of feeling state. I think in your book, Alexander, you talk about, at the very beginning of the book, you talk about the kind of main kind of cultural story that people have. And correct me if I'm wrong, it's something like, that's just the way it is. Yeah. So
just the way things are. Yeah.
So, and I think sometimes I can just take things for granted. Oh, that's just the way things are. But when I kind of like shift out of that place and I kind of, elevate myself almost a little bit to think, well, actually, wow, that's amazing that I've got that. I'm really appreciative of that. And then for me, there's something then about just creating sort of space internally to allow that feeling to be there and almost to flow through the body, just to let it kind of, so you might feel a warming in your tummy, you might feel a warming in your heart, you might feel your shoulders drop, you might feel your furled brow unfurl, you might feel a whole load of different things. And we've talked about kind of embodiment in different ways a lot in these podcasts, haven't we? So again, here's another practice in which embodiment and you tuning into the sense of yourself as an embodied creature is really important here. Because for me, so for example, I was feeling really just lying in bed one night about a week ago, just feeling really grateful at some fortuitous, almost serendipitous turns of events. And I noticed this sort of fuzzy feeling in my heart and in my chest, and it sort of rippled out to my shoulders and my forearms. And I just sort of, just got curious. Again, another theme for you, which is really important in your work, isn't it? Curiosity. And so I go, okay, so what's happening here? And just allowing that to be there, not having any judgments about it, not trying to force it, not trying to kind of grasp hold of it. But really, really important to allow those physical sensations of warmth and goodness, or whatever you want to call them, to really be there. So again, we talked about mindfulness quite a lot on these podcasts. So paying attention, noticing, and allowing.
Yeah, I think there's something for me about that it's so easy to get lost, and gratitude is one of those things that can bring us home. I get contacted by clients for all sorts of different things. Sometimes there's tangible real-world goals. Often it's just life isn't what I want it to be. It doesn't feel the way I want to feel it, and I don't know how to shift this. I don't know how to make a difference. And gratitude practice is certainly something that I have brought in with a number of clients. And I've had a number of sessions where I have quite early on, just sort of said to my client, we've done our little bit of catch up. I know what's going on for them. And I'll say to them, okay, tell me what you're grateful for right now. And they look a bit stumped for a while. I mean, I think a lot of people generally are quite stumped for a little while. I mean, what are you asking me? But, okay. I feel grateful for having a job and some income. And I feel grateful for my partner. And I feel grateful for my children. Okay. What else do you feel grateful for? I feel grateful for these conversations. I feel grateful for the sunlight while I was walking here today. I feel grateful for peering into the shop windows on the way that I walked here. And something begins to change. I will just sit there resolutely and say, okay, now what else are you grateful for? Something begins to change over time, and it steps away. The voice changes. It steps away from being, yeah, all right, well, here's some stuff that I suppose I'm grateful for. I'm exaggerating, but there's something, it's quite detached. It's not, I am pressed up against this stuff. It's not that this stuff is really present and real and imperative and passionate for me. This is just the stuff that I know, yeah, sure, I'm grateful for this. But as you keep going, and as I keep resolutely pushing my client, the things often get smaller and they get more emotive, and it becomes a bit safer to admit that the pair of shoes that they put on feels so comfy, and it's taken them months to wear them in, and now they really like this pair of shoes. Can I talk about these shoes? Would it be all right if I talk about these shoes for a while? And you're like, yeah, sure, talk about the shoes. Whatever it is, it becomes more tender, and it becomes, as you say, warming in the heart and warming in the tummy. And that's the practice, I think. That's the unlocking. That's the presencing. That's the coming back to. That's the coming home. It's that just beginning to name and beginning to appreciate, beginning to notice. I'm often reminded of the phrase, standing on the shoulder of giants. That there's no such thing as someone who's made it by themselves or someone who's built it all alone. We all depend on one another. We depend on so many things. We depend on all the people who bring us food. We depend on all the people who keep us safe. We depend on all the things that allow our lives to be safe, so that we don't have to worry about war and poverty and extreme hardship that happens all over the world. There are so many things from, I'm glad I have a roof over my head. I really am deeply glad and grateful and appreciative of the fact that I have somewhere safe to be, right through to, I spent 5 minutes today watching a bee on a flower, and I was really grateful for that moment. There is just so much. And if you begin listing, I think the list is almost endless. And that is remarkable. And that just shows us and teaches us so much.
Okay, lovely. I mean, what some of the stuff you say there, Alexander, kind of links into what I wanted to say, because to me, what you were talking about in some ways was if someone really drills down on the fine grain kind of small stuff of their experience, then there's more and more and more and more which people become aware of. And it makes me think about the episode we did a couple of weeks ago about visioning. And for me, there are kind of links with visioning in that when I'm consciously grateful for something and I want to kind of, nurture that state and generate more of that, then for me, detail is really important. So, if I'm wake up one morning and I'm grateful for the view outside of my window, then really kind of elaborate on that. Use the powers of my mind, not so much my imagination, but it feels like it's in the same sphere in my mind, in my brain, as the visioning imagination component. Let that really receive everything. So, I'm looking outside, I see some autumn leaves, I see the way that the wind churns them round, I see someone kind of walk down the street and they're having a kind of lovely conversation, seem to be having a kind of joyful conversation with someone. So just to kind of let myself almost be bathed, I guess, by a whole experience. But for me, there's something about, so when I'm just to drill down on some practicality. So, there have been occasions in my life, my adult life, when, I've done this on a daily basis. I get a journaling book out and I say, thank you for ... thank you for, and so on and so forth. And, and in that writing, I will go into detail. Thank you for the way that someone spoke to me. That, and I think I've said before on this podcast that one of the things I really enjoy in my life is striking out conversations with and relating to people who are relative strangers, but who I see on a sort of weekly basis. So like my regular shopkeepers. Don't know these people. I know some of them by first name, but, so I could write down in my kind of gratitude list for one day, thankful for how helpful Alice was in the shop today. And I hope it doesn't come, that's not trite, that is about really kind of, I have this image of like some paper and some fire lighting material, and there's just this little tiny ember, and I'm just kind of blowing through cupped hands, try and get it going. It kind of starts there, kind of thing. And also what I, another, just leading into another point, all the time I'm doing that on a very, very simple kind of cognitive level, I'm not thinking other stuff. I'm not doing my usual ruminatory worrying about stuff. Now, that doesn't mean to say that, all that stuff goes away, but in that moment, it really, truly is not there. So if we're thinking about kind of really present moment consciousness, then all my worries have gone. The situations that need addressing haven't gone, but the way I'm relating to them, because I'm practicing something around kind of gratitude and appreciation, is that stuff isn't there anymore. So, like I said in my introduction, there's something kind of really critical here on a very basic sort of cognitive level about orientating thoughts towards stuff which is going to generate, a better mood, better kind of feelings, or the feelings that you want, So if people are thinking that, gratitude, it's a bit kind of ethereal or a bit kind of woo-woo or whatever, just to bring it back down to something which is very grounded, if you think about it in terms of your basic kind of cognitions, then, what in effect what you're doing is kind of you're orientating towards stuff that you want to feel, experiences you want to have, which means that other stuff that you don't want to have is not present at that moment in time. And then, I think we've talked about this again before. Then if we think about the kind of, the sort of neural programming of it, you begin to kind of, groove those neural pathways more. And you take the little kind of groove making ball out of those neural pathways you don't want to be sort of carving into repeatedly. And thinking about the kind of things that I can be, or anyone can be grateful for, it's easy to kind of think that you can only be grateful for tangible things that are in the world, like grateful for another person or grateful for your job or whatever. But one of the things that I find when I've been practicing this is that I can be grateful for states of mind. I can be grateful for attitudes. And really interestingly for me personally, I can be grateful for potentialities and possibilities within myself. So, sometimes I might write down in my gratitudes for the day, thank you for that part of me which is able to go towards a difficult problem, and those parts of me that I'm grateful for are not necessarily the finished product. They're not necessarily the final work in terms of who I want to be as a person. Often those characteristics are kind of work in progress. But for me, one of the lovely things about gratitude is that I can be grateful for work in progress. It doesn't have to be a kind of finished article. I've written a note to myself here saying grateful for things in myself, a kind of thank you, Neil, as well as things outside of myself. So my encouragement and invitation really to people listening to this is to you can be grateful for things that, attributes of yourself, things that are going on inside you. You can be grateful for a dream. You can be grateful for a sensation. It doesn't have to be all external, tangible, hard world stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I have been feeling very grateful for this week is foundations that were laid years ago. There was a moment where I'd finished a workout, and then I do my stretches after my workout. And I finish with a particular stretch that was taught to me by a partner who was a craniosacral therapist. And it always had this remarkable effect on alleviating any depressive symptoms that I had. And I was going through a really hard patch. I hadn't been sleeping. I've been a really rough couple of days. And then I just managed to do this stretch just right. And I felt so much relieved afterwards, so much better, so much more energized afterwards. And I was just overcome with a sense of gratitude that I was taught that I happened to have met that person, and that person happened to have given me that skill. And that I have so many of those lessons and gifts and offerings that I've had through my life. And then that connects me with those people in the past, all these teachers that I've had and all of these friends that I've had who've given me little gifts of insights or techniques or jobs or whatever. It also seems to connect me with sort of the story of my life, like the sense that there's some sort of linear, there's a series of chapters behind me. And that was more of that, a strong sense of connection with that through realizing how grateful I felt for an experience.
I think that that's really helpful for me, because I tend to think of gratitude as something which I'm grateful just for things in this moment. But like you say, Alexander, I can or anybody can sort of stand in the moment and be, appreciative and grateful for the things that have got them to where they are, and for me, there's a really unashamed kind of pat on the back, give yourself a pat on the back element to this, I find that kind of really useful, and it's not something I always kind of manage to do for myself, but I think that kind of comes out of doing a kind of gratitude, being aware of things that I'm grateful for. One thing that I mentioned, I think in the beginning, just referenced, was something about not forcing it, and I just want to sort of mention that. We've already mentioned quite a few things. I feel we've kind of got across quite a good sense of what gratitude is. We could, before we finish, Alexander, just do some practical bits on, like, journaling, what to write down, those kinds of things. Before we get onto that, just a kind of cautionary note really from me about, this isn't something to force. It's not something that you feel you should do. I mean, there's a tension there, I think, within a lot of self-development work between the conscious intention to do something and showing up and doing something versus the, well, actually, if I push on through, then maybe it might be more damaging, or it might be inauthentic, or it might not hit the mark. So I think there's that tension. So that's for everyone to kind of, judge for themselves, kind of thing. But I really would like to say, it's not about forcing it. It's not something that should be done through gritted teeth. It's not something like, oh, so-and-so says I should do this, because it's the worst thing in the world to be sort of sitting down with a piece of paper and a pen and just writing, I'm grateful for this year, through gritted teeth. It's just not going to get you anywhere. So if you feel that you are forcing it, a gratitude practice, then, please stop and do something else. Don't ignore or relegate or negate. There's other things within your being that are calling for your attention. You might be kind of really angry about something, or might be really upset about something. It might be that those things that are going on in you kind of need attention. So it's like those things might be calling louder. So go and attend to those, and then you might want to kind of come back to doing some gratitude. I'm not saying that it's about being in 100% kind of okay state to do something. It's more a question of kind of balance and emphasis, I think. But if you just tune into yourself, and if you can feel there's something going on which might be kind of getting in the way, I mean, I suppose there's also another point of view, which it'd be interesting to see what you have to say on this, Alexander, because I'm reminded of your that energy that you need to input from the beginning of doing something to kind of get going. So I'm sure there's more than one way to skin a cat with this.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I really wanted to mention in today's episode is I've been talking to a couple of clients recently. There's a big phenomenon in the world of personal development and self-help, which is toxic positivity, which is the idea that you should be utterly positive, utterly driven at all times. And if you don't feel like that, there's something wrong with you. And a whole series of practices that exist to bring someone back to happiness and positivity, and that is where you should live. And it's a real problem. It's an absolute barrier to real development. And I think that there's probably a brand of that in this, of toxic gratitude, which has to do with forcing ourselves to be appreciative of things because we know we're supposed to, or feeling like things in our lives are inescapable, like they cannot be changed, or they're too scary to change, and so we make ourselves be grateful for them, maybe pretend that we're grateful for them, or force ourselves to think of them as things we're grateful for. If there are things in your life which you no need to change and no need your attention, but are really quite scary to approach, it can be very tempting to put them in the box of, here is something I should be grateful for. And so I think there are a number of ways in which gratitude can be used in a quite inauthentic way and in a way that's quite harmful to us. And I think, while you've been talking, Neil, I think my suggestion of an antidote to that would begin when you're beginning a gratitude practice, when you're beginning to name things you feel grateful for. Try and begin with really small, simple things. Try not to jump to, I'm grateful for my children. I'm grateful for my partner. I'm grateful for, I don't know, some massive thing. I'm grateful for having a steady job. Try and begin with, I'm grateful for the sensation of warmth and coziness that I had when I woke up this morning. Or I'm grateful for the smell of the toast after I'd cooked it this morning. Really simple, tactile, genuine things that aren't going to bring you near to those things where you're forcing yourself into a place of gratitude. And as I think we've been saying about my little anecdote and what we've been saying about gratitude today, it tends to be a freewheeling thing. If you can begin to access that warming, softening sensation in your tummy and in your heart, then this tends to freewheel. It tends to be, oh, hang on, there's another thing, and there's another thing. Oh, and I feel grateful for that. Oh, that thing was lovely, and I really appreciated that. And once you've got the motor running, it seems to do pretty well. So yeah, my suggestion is begin with little things. I do have another little warning around gratitude, but before I go on to that, anything you want to add to what I've just said, Neil?
No, I mean, I think that was really helpful for me, Alexander, because it reminded me about just keeping it simple. And you mentioned a phrase earlier on, I think it was in your Checkin, about kind of coming home. So much of this work is about kind of coming home to yourself. And I think that it's such good advice, really, to say, do it with the simple sensory and sensual things first, because that then will give someone a really visceral, embodied experience of what it feels like to do that. So there's a direct experience then of the intentional thoughts experiencing a causal relationship, an impact of the intentional thoughts with kind of felt bodily experience. So that, for me, then creates evidence that, oh, great, okay, there might be something in this. And like, there's another kind of, I'm sure you're aware of this, but in sort of not just coaching, but in psychology, behavioral psychology, particularly in general, this notion of like, give yourself the best possible chance to succeed. So start small. Give yourself the best possible chance to experience what it is that you're going for. So I think the whole thing about kind of starting small and close to home is really important. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. The other thing you wanted to add, what was that?
Yeah, my other little warning about gratitude. Gratitude can be an antidote to progress and to, I guess, ambition and vision and dreaming. Gratitude can be a thing that tethers us in place and makes us be more and more okay with what is now. And it can be seen as a way to be more and more okay with the way things are and not to think about the way things can be. If we're visioning and being ambitious and having great ideas for ourselves and being pushing and being determined and being resolute about continuously taking steps in the direction of our dreams, then that has a very directed energy to it. It has a feeling of, I am going to a place. Gratitude can be very much, but I'm in my place. I am in this place here right now, and I'm deeply appreciative of all that is. Now, those are two different feelings. Those are two different energies, if you will. Those are two different approaches. But we are interesting, complex, and multidimensional beings as humans, and we are totally capable of maintaining multiple states at once. There's a bit in one of the Star Trek movies where somebody says to Spock, what does he say? Something like, "What are you experiencing right now?" And Spock replies, "Well, I'm experiencing multiple states right now." I think it's just wonderful. There's this idea that we're all supposed to be one thing at a time, but we're not. We're always multiple things. And the idea of focus and directedness and resolute steps and maintaining a dream and working on a vision and then making it reality, and the idea of being present here and now and grateful and appreciative and using that warming, presencing sensation in order to fully come into this moment, look around with a real seeing, with a real experiencing, with a real presence. Those two things are something we can maintain at the same time. So I guess what I wanted to say was just a kind of a word warning that gratitude can be used as a way to kind of squash down ambition and yearning and pushing and striving. And I really believe that they can coexist. I see them coexist all the time. One is about, how do I get the most out of now? And one of them is about, where am I going? And we are smart enough and interesting enough and complex enough to be able to be both of those things at once.
Thank you, Alexander. Okay. I'd like to move on now, just briefly, really, because we've covered, I think, quite a lot of ground, just to some thoughts about practicalities of how we do this. I think we've covered some of this. I mean, one of the things that we can do is we can keep a journal. You know, we can start the day with writing down some gratitudes. You know, we can take a chunk of time. We can do it for a week or so, or a fortnight, or you could just take, 2 hours in the day. And just as a little playful experiment, what am I grateful for? What am I appreciative of? I think the words are quite important in terms of how you sort of start off. So you might want a stock phrase in terms of like, I am grateful for, or simply a thank you. You can play around with just having those words as phrases in your mind throughout a day and see what arises. One of my kind of invitations and encouragements in these podcasts is to receive the stuff that we talk about as an opportunity for play, to play around with. I might have mentioned this before, but one of a previous tutor of mine, coach and tutor, I think, said it's a playground, not a prison. Okay, so just to have a sense that you can play and experiment, and like I said at the very beginning of this episode, if something doesn't work, then for you, then that's fine. You know, leave it. It's not kind of not compelled to take things on board. So that spirit of experimentation and playfulness and curiosity and seeing what comes. So those are my thoughts. So I'd just like to really say that, you know, this isn't a really, really highly complex phenomenon in terms of its sort of its naturalness, the way that gratitude comes up. It's quite uncomplicated, really. There are many podcast episodes where I think we'll be talking about much more complex kind of issues. It doesn't mean to say that gratitude is any less relevant, but it's quite a simple kind of emotion that arises. And for me, the practice of it also is relatively kind of simple. It's not something to make complicated, I suppose. Yeah, those are my sort of closing thoughts on the topic.
Yeah, I personally, I believe in sort of making space for it, or at least making an intentional time for this. So journaling is amazing, and I really support the idea of a gratitude journal. But also, sometimes I will take myself out for a walk, and I will not let myself listen to music or a podcast or whatever, and I will make that walk have the intention of gratitude. And so I will just keep trying to bring my attention back around to the idea of gratitude. And I find that walking is particularly helpful because I will notice things along the way, and that will bring me also into that present moment. One of the many things that I have learned sometimes helps with sleeping, and we will be coming on to talk about sleep at another time, is doing this as falling asleep. So in bed, and then just allowing my mind to wander and notice more and more things that I feel grateful for. And like a kind of mindfulness practice before falling asleep, it can be very restful. It can be very, it can calm the mind and allow you to kind of come into the present moment more. So those are two ways that I tend to use it.
Thank you, Alexander. Okay, we are about up for time today. I've really enjoyed that. I'm looking at Alexander's face. So he's enjoyed it too. So I hope you, the listener, have enjoyed it as well. If you want to get in touch with either me or Alexander, for me, you can contact me via my website, which is www.coachingforlifefroom.co.uk. And yourself, Alexander, for people who want to contact you?
Yeah, my website is deepcoaching.co.uk, and you can either contact me through there or book in for a consultation.
And again, like I said at the beginning of the episode, we really do appreciate feedback. Probably the best place to put that is on the Facebook page, which is the Big Yearning Podcast. And please do put the word out there if you think there's anybody in your friendship group or any work colleagues that you got who you think might benefit from listening to mine and Alexander's discussions, then please let them know. And next time, the topic will be recognizing our gifts and our strengths. That will be in 2 weeks' time. So it's been lovely to be with you today, and I very much look forward to seeing you next time. So it's goodbye for now.
And goodbye from me. Thanks for tuning in.